A story is a metaphor. Everybody looks at a story as a metaphor for what? My own life. So if you don't see yourself in the characters, that story's no good and you don't attach to it.
Think about that for a moment. If your audiences, being your colleagues, your customers, and the communities you serve, don't see themselves in the stories you share, then chances are you won't motivate them. But how do you orient your stories such that they connect deeply with the audiences you're trying to move to action? Well, we're going to show you how to do that today on The Business of Story. Hi, welcome. I'm Park Howell, and I have the honor to host an author of my favorite book on storytelling and the hero's journey, Christopher Vogler. He's a legendary Hollywood story consultant and author of The Writer's Journey, who shaped films like The Lion King and helped brands and leaders around the world unlock the living power of story. Today, you'll discover why wish fulfillment is the secret to audience connection, how to turn obstacles into opportunities, and why stories are the most powerful, healing, and orienting force we have. So if you're ready to learn from one of the best storytellers in the world, well, you're in the right place. Chris, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Park. Really glad to be here.
This has been a long time in coming for me because I have been studying your work for 20 years now, I guess. And I was fortunate 2 episodes ago to have John Booker on here, the executive director of the Joseph Campbell Foundation. He invoked your name several times in our conversation, and I said, boy, would I like to talk to Chris. And he said, let me make that introduction. So thank you for accepting my invite for coming on the show.
Yes, thanks to John, who is a great facilitator and connector. You know, that's a wonderful skill in life and kind of an archetype, in fact, somebody who has that ability to connect people up and wire things together, all for the good. So
Yeah.
he's a good one.
Well, and I first really learned about the hero's journey back in 2006 when our son was going to film school at Chapman University there at the Dodge School of Film and Arts, a very prominent film school. He, of course, wanted to be a filmmaker, a director coming out, but now he's really found his way in virtual reality and mixed reality filmmaking. And so Chapman was a fabulous education for him. And when I first saw the hero's journey, it spoke to me and it said, well, this is a customer journey in my world. This is an agency owner's journey. This is my journey. Why don't they teach this in the advertising arts and sciences? So I took it upon myself to understand as much as I could about it. I attempted to read Joseph Campbell's A Hero with 1,000 Faces, had a hard time digesting it. But your book was the book that really opened it up to me, The Writer's Journey. And it all kind of started with a memo, as I understand, that you wrote in 1985 to help other screenwriters in Hollywood understand and appreciate the hero's journey. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yes, that's sort of part of my legend that I built around myself, which I think is an important part of branding. I've always paid a lot of attention to that, to how you create a unique identity for yourself and sort of define and put a particular spin on your value, whatever it is you're bringing to the marketplace. So telling stories about the origins of one's ideas or one's company is an important part of this puzzle we're all trying to put together. The story goes back, like many stories do, a long way. As a kid, I was very deeply and even physically moved by stories and particular kinds of stories, fanciful things, imaginative things, historical dramas, adventure, swashbucklers, things like that, science fiction, all those things lit me up in my body. So I was looking for the rule book, what we would call the algorithms that determine how you tell a story and get this emotional effect and physical effect. So I was on the hunt for that, and I found it in film school because a professor heard me yakking about mythological things, not having any idea what I was talking about. But he pointed me to The Hero with a Thousand Faces, and I, at that time, had the stomach for it to digest it, and it isn't easy to digest. But I gobbled it up and, felt that this was, wow, something really useful and impressive for what I was getting into at film school, being a filmmaker and finding my place in the story world. So I started working for Disney, and while I was there, they went through a transition from the old Disney days, where they were sort of living on the fumes of Walt Disney's own imagination. And then they transitioned during my time to this new management, which basically came from New York and television worlds. And they revolutionized things and kind of pepped the studio up and decided they were going to go after animation. And they put a lot of emphasis on memos, on internal memos that gave sometimes vision and definition to what they were aiming for, what kind of stories and so forth. And the great memo writer was Jeffrey Katzenberg, who eventually ended up being the production head of the studio and the guy who really led the charge on animation. So I studied his ways and I took Campbell's ideas and basically translated it into movie language because he wasn't thinking about movies and really hadn't seen very many. He almost bragged that he didn't see anything between the last Charlie Chaplin silent movie and 2001. Uh, there was a gap while he was busy writing his books and studying. So I felt there was a job there to do. I think, like you see that here's a thing that's useful, and it's really useful in my area. So I said, this is something that has, commercial and immediate applications in movie storytelling, and it was proven by George Lucas with Star Wars because when you see Star Wars and you know anything about Campbell, you can see they know each other. So
Can I ask you right there? That's so. So Lucas did this, and as I understand it, he was a bit of a student of Campbell and kind of applied the hero's journey to writing that first Star Wars script, which of course is legendary now. But before that, The Wizard of Oz, that didn't know anything about the hero's journey, pretty much follows the hero's journey exactly, does it not?
yes, I with some variations, which always are great because they kind of prove the flexibility of
Mm-hmm.
this idea that it doesn't exactly land where the model might show it, and that's actually healthy because you don't want to be bound as if it were a cookbook recipe that you had to follow. So this is an issue that I have thought about a lot. The fact that Campbell's ideas really didn't come into consciousness in the filmmaking community until after Star Wars, and actually quite a bit after that, it sort of became current and part of the general knowledge, a part of the brain of Hollywood. And but you look back and you see it everywhere. You see it in gangster movies and in westerns and in mysteries and in cowboy movies and science fiction and fantasy and all these other places, as if Campbell had time traveled somehow. But I think the answer is that all the writers that came before us uh, very often had a classical education. And, in the old days, people used to study the Greek and Roman myths, so they had a grounding in that. A lot of people came out of newspaper. I mean, I'm talking here about the great classic filmmakers of the 30s and 40s and 50s. Some of them had newspaper backgrounds, so they were a different kind of storyteller. But this this set of patterns, the hero's journey, is something that I think transcends anybody who's written about it. It's just there, and people have picked up on it and recognized it, and don't use the same terms maybe, or didn't think of it that way, but there it is, and it's kind of indisputable. So we were talking about this memo, and I just made that decision for myself that I want to really hammer this out and do this operation of taking pieces of Campbell's ideas, which were much broader. I mean, he was talking about human psychology and about the sort of madmen malaise that men were going through in the 1950s. His book came out in 1949, but he was kind of feeling the post-war wondering of, why are we here? And we've been through something terrible, and now what do we do? Um, so I took out of that the pieces that seemed to apply to filmmaking, and came up with my own slightly different framework from his, and slightly different terminology, but it's Campbell through and through. And so I actually took time off from Disney, and went to New York and hung out with a buddy of mine who was a film professor at Columbia. And he was a big film buff. And we just sat for weeks looking at classic films and going, well, where's the hero's journey in this? Where's the call to adventure? Is there a mentor or not? All these elements, we looked at them in every imaginable genre and in hundreds of films. And the result of that was this memo. So I came back and planted it at Disney, and it had this sneaky way of operating beyond my uh, intentions or my physical control. I had this feeling about it that it was a viral idea. This is way before computers, so this wasn't even a thought of things being viral at that time. But I felt that way, that this is almost a living organism that I've created in this memo. And it will go out. I had this very strong confidence. It will go out and do work for me of convincing people, and that actually turned out to be true because um, I think that a part of my legend is that somebody at the studio plagiarized the memo and put his name on it and presented it to the top management, to Jeffrey Katzenberg, and Katzenberg thought it was great. And I heard about it through the grapevine, and I contacted Katzenberg and claimed it. And he said, "Yeah, okay, I get it. You wrote it. You're the guy. Go work with animation. They are doing this thing about lions." So I went to the animation building thinking I would have to sell them on this idea, but I walked in and the memo had preceded me, and they already had absorbed it as a corporation, as a part of the company. It was in their collective brain, and there in the lobby was a corkboard with the 12 stages that I talk about of The Lion King. It was a different title at that time, King of the Jungle, but there was the hero's journey laid out according to my plan. So I didn't have to sell it. It had done this work for me. And the reason I kind of have always leaned on this for advising people is when you write something, you don't know um, how much it can travel and how much it can do for you. But I think there is an operation of charging it with intention, which is what I did. I took those pieces of paper and I willed them to go out and do work for me, and they did. So that led eventually to a book version of this, fully inflated, and that it is another kind of robot that goes out and does work for me.
Well, in the book, The Writer's Journey, I recommend it all the time to people. And to me, it's a bit of a misnomer because people think, well, I'm not a writer, I'm not a screenwriter, I don't need it. But I'm like, no, this is much more than a writing book. Yeah, at its core, it's a writing book, but it's like an instruction manual to life. It's an instruction manual for strategy development. It's an instruction manual on how to look at a circumstance you're in a different way that has much more humanity to it, much more energy. And in the book, right towards the beginning, one of my favorite paragraphs is you wrote, I came looking for the design principles of storytelling, but on the road I found something more, a set of principles for living. I came to believe that the hero's journey is nothing less than a handbook for life, a complete instruction manual in the art of being human.
That's whoever wrote that. Very wise man. Uh, no, it struck me very early on that I had the corner of something much bigger than the screenwriting side of it. I thought that was great, and that was made it worth doing. But that, as you say, and as I said, um, there's a lot more going on here. And I think this is something we have to thank our ancestors for memorializing this and for passing it down in the form it's sort of encoded into the stories, um, because it's useful life strategy, survival, important information. That's part of the theory of myths and stories is that they do uh, encode for us and capture the wisdom of the past if we're smart enough to read it. So I'm glad that other people get this. And it started happening as soon as I came out and spoke. I think the first group I spoke to was the romance writers of Orange County. And they got it right away and just swarmed me, wanting to know more about it because they needed it for their kind of writing, which is sometimes under pressure, and they have to write 3 or 4 books a year. So they needed something that made it a little bit systematic, not cut and dried, but kind of orderly.
Mhm.
Uh, but as soon as, I mean, that day, somebody came up to me and said, I'm not a writer. I don't know anything I'm never going to write anything. I'm a practical nurse or whatever. I forget what she was, but she said, this is in my business. I see this in my business every day in whatever she was into. Travel agents would come up to me and say, this is fantastic for people going on scientific expeditions or sort of scientific vacations to the Arctic. That she said they said they needed this. They need this kind of orientation. So um, yeah, it's a much bigger treasure than this little nugget of screenwriting.
Well, and let's talk then about story and how it has an energy and a life all to itself. And so when I look back for me, my hero's journey, I didn't even know I was on because I didn't even know that's what you called it. Is I had been in the advertising world and the work we had done in traditional advertising wasn't nearly as effective as it used to be in the early 2000s because of the advent of social media and e-commerce and on the noise that came at us. And I was frustrated. I wished to know what the answer was, and I had this will to act. And I was lucky, timing wise, because we happen to have a son at Chapman. And I thought, well, what the hell does Hollywood know? As soon as I was introduced to the hero's journey, it hit me like a ton of bricks. It's like, well, my God, this is what I've been looking for. So the hero's journey I was on actually led me to the hero's journey that I've now used for the past 20 years to great effect. And you say when you put a wish out there, it begins the adventure. It starts the story. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this was one of the things that hit me as I was working for Disney. They used me as an early form of Wikipedia. I was the answer man. and they would throw all kinds of oddball things at me. What holidays are associated with trolls in Norway was a question that came up one time, and I knew the answer. It's New Year's, but uh, I was on this trail, and this is one of the things that emerged. I think I noticed it when I was in a class and we had distributed each other's scripts, and we were reading like out of the first 10 pages where, you do this in writing classes. uh, you assign parts, and people read their own script so they can hear the dialogue and kind of see, if they were on track or not. And I noticed that maybe the dialogue was good and clever, and maybe the characters are interesting, and so forth. But I just wasn't into it until somebody said, "You know what? I want something," or "I wish I could get out of this boring town," or "I wish I could find somebody who understands me," or I really want to win for once in my life," or "Can't I be lucky for once in my life?" So as soon as that happened, my whole being was in it and paying attention. And like all of a sudden, I felt almost like it was about me because I have wishes too. And I think that's part of the power of Disney, was that they latched onto this idea of wishing when you wish upon a star. Um, and then I have a more, developed idea, but I think you've already got a handle on that because you talked about wishing versus willing. Willing is, a little more directed and advanced form of wishing. But it just opened it up to me that something happens when somebody says, or when it's implied that they want something. You don't have to put it in the dialogue. Uh, just if somebody's in a crowded bar and there are two people over there kissing and the person is sitting alone, already it's implied and understood they would like to be there too. They would like to have somebody to smooch with. So um, the wish is there even if it's not spoken.
And and don't you say too that the will is just a wish now concentrated and focused into action?
Yes, yes, and it's kind of a necessary operation. If you just go on wishing, that can drive a story so far. But at some point, that has to be concretized. That has to be put on the line. What are you willing to? You wish for something, but what are you going to pay for it? And what are you going to do to, in reality, in the physical world? What are you going to do on the stage that we can see? That's the other side of it. Not just in your head, but some action. So that entered my mind, and I
Mm-hmm.
I think in the book I mentioned, uh, as at Disney we were working on some of the old classic fairy tales and trying to see, is there something here? Could we find that? And one of the stories I looked at was Rumpelstiltskin, which is about this little girl whose father has bragged that she's so talented she could spin straw into gold. And the king is kind of literal minded, and he says, "I'd like to see that. And if you can't spin straw into gold, I will cut your head off in the morning." So she goes into the room with this pile of straw, and it doesn't even say that she cries in the original story, but every illustration shows her crying. And I believe that crying, that human emotion, that desire to get out of the room and solve her problem, brings the story into existence. And the story is, like I've suggested there in the book, I think of it as a living entity that's cooperating with you. It wants to train you. It wants to teach you. It wants to make you more conscious. It wants to wake you up. It wants to get you out of your jam. It wants to help you, but it's a little bit mischievous. So the story says, "Oh, somebody wants something. Somebody wishes for something. I'll give it to them. But I'm going to give it to them in a twisty, unexpected, scary way that will teach them a lesson. So stories don't just give you what you want right away. They deny it for a while, or they give it to you in a crumpled up, messed up form that you have to then digest and deal with, or they keep you guessing.
Yeah.
But they sort of, to my mind, come to life when as soon as somebody wishes for something or has a strong desire or strong emotion. Uh, because that's what happens in the story. This little man appears, and he just comes out of nowhere and pops into the room, into this locked room, and offers her this deal. Basically, it takes 3 times to do it, but they eventually get to uh, promise me your firstborn child, and I will get you out of the room by spinning the straw into gold. So, it's ultimately the story trying to teach her a lesson about what's really valuable in life.
Yeah, and in your book, at the end of that chapter, you say the real twist might be here is what did they do those 3 nights after all of that gold had been spun? So was that baby actually Rumpelstiltskin's?
Right. Yeah. I got that sense about many of the fairy tales as I explored them at Disney. One of my principles that I always applied there was I went to the research department and I said, get me the earliest version of this you can find. If it was based on an Egyptian myth, I want to find that myth, or I want to find the earliest translation, because the further back you go to the sources, the more insight and power you can get out of these things. Uh, that story of Rumpelstiltskin is in many, many cultures with different names. They're not all silly names, but uh, it struck me that this was really the story talking and teaching lessons.
Well, and a lot of the branders and marketers out there listening to this might be thinking, Park, what in the world does this have to do with my world? And it comes back to something you say in the book that I've actually parroted in our world, is you said storytellers are wish granters. They're in the wish granting business by telling a story of whatever the protagonist in that story wishes for and has the will to act upon is the same sort of thing the audience has. And so they are co-creating or living in this story. I think brands, to be successful, are also in the wish granting business. Don't sell what you make, but sell what you make happen and how you fulfill the wish of your prospect or customer through your product or service. And you use the energy, the aliveness of stories to be able to connect with them that way versus a laundry list of bulleted features and functions with a little bit of benefits thrown in there. No, put those aside. Don't speak to the logic reason brain. Speak to the heart, the emotional center. What does your audience wish to have? What do they want to make that wish fulfilled? And how are you going to speak with them or share stories with them that triggers their will to act?
Yes, yes. I'm thinking as you spoke about some consulting work I did with the Swarovski Crystal Company. And they drew together a number of brand managers from all over Europe, from BMW and different beer companies and jewelry companies and so forth. And I gave a presentation on Mickey Mouse and how that idea had developed. And I made the statement that all your brands, just as you say, um, are in the wish fulfillment business. So, it pays to figure out what is the audience's or the consumer's wish um, that you are aiming to satisfy. And they asked me, well, what is it for Mickey Mouse and Disney? And I had to think a minute, and I realized, oh, the wish is that there would be some place in the world where people are nice.
that easy.
Yeah, yeah, and that got approval from the brand managers. They agreed. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Well, and that's why this energy of story is so important. Stories are alive. You say in there, stories have a healing power. How do stories have a healing power?
Well, they suggest that life can be orderly and meaningful. And we get a lot of information, especially in the modern world, saying there is no meaning, everything is chaotic. We live in what's called the postmodern world, which to me means that all of the frames and the systems of the past have been shattered. It's like somebody fired a bullet through a mirror, and we're living in the slow motion shards of that. And it has some virtues that kind of everything is interchangeable. And young people um, have all these fashions and modes that they have to be in command of. They have to be able to shift gears and talk different ways to different groups, ethnic groups, or age groups. They have to have many different costumes available to them. Um, so a lot of information in the world was saying chaos, chaos, chaos. But the stories uh, calmly you refer us back to the idea that no, there is some structure and some meaning to things. I'll just give you a personal example here. My wife is going through some medical challenges, and she was in the hospital for a couple of weeks this summer, and hit a really bad place with it. And she asked me, "All right, Mr. Hero's Journey, uh, where's the hero's journey of this difficult thing she was going through?" So I drew her a diagram that showed her falling down a well of this illness that had come on, and then trying to navigate through a tunnel to a staircase where there was some light to get out of here. But I said, in the middle of it, there is a big pit, and you've already fallen in one hole. There's another hole, deeper hole, which you could die. So you've got to edge your way around that danger, and then find your way out of it. And it was almost magical how it helped her to go, oh, okay, so I see, I've got to be careful now, and then I got to pick myself up and get on out of this place. And that's the beauty, I think, of this idea, the hero's journey idea, and of stories in general, is that they can give you orientation, uh, and also heal your soul by reassurance that your life means something. It may seem meaningless, but actually, it is part of a bigger picture, and there are reasons for things.
Uh, and stories have this survival value to them. So you're talking a little bit about that, but you may tell a story of someone who survived, maybe what your wife is going through or something, and how they did that. And then your wife or other audiences can live through that, through the metaphor of that story, is again kind of an instruction manual of how they might do it, that there is hope at the end of that tunnel.
Yeah, that's exactly how I first came to define what a story is. I was kind of dodging that question as I taught classes for a long time, and then finally I forced myself to define the thing. And I said a story is, I'm following Campbell here, a story is a metaphor. Everybody looks at a story as a metaphor for what? My own life. So if you don't see yourself in the characters, that story's no good, and you don't attach to it. You might look at people in a theater, and you can tell standing in the back of the theater if they're into it or not into it by how they're leaning forward or sitting back. And you want them leaning forward and paying attention, because in some way this is my story and it's about me. Or there's going to be one little clue in here that is going to go into my story and help me one of these days. So people are hunting for that all the time. They're looking for clues. They're looking for uh, hacks and fixes and slight improvements. It's one of the things that Campbell said is that, don't expect in every story there'll be a huge transformation, that a life-changing thing that, is the peak experience of your life. It might be just this little um, refinement or a little amplification of something. That you maybe turn up the volume a little on a channel, or realize, I've been making this slight error, and I need, and through examples in the story, through the experiences of the people in the story, you see either that's great behavior and I'm going to copy that, or that's terrible behavior and I'm going to try to avoid that. So people are always doing this internal metaphor thing of going, well, where am I, and what can I get out of it? And if I can't do that, then I won't stay with that story. I'll drift off.
So there are some people, and like you said, Campbell didn't watch a lot of movies while he was writing his thesis on the hero's journey. And we've got lots of friends that are like, oh, I read a little bit. I don't watch a lot of TVs. I don't want TV. I don't watch Netflix or whatever. On the other end of that spectrum is my wife, Michelle, and I. We watch a movie or something pretty much every single night. It's our escape. It's our way to sit down, say the day's done. Let's go on an adventure somewhere. Why is that? Why do some of us really embrace that story and others are like, no, I'm okay. I'm not doing that.
Well, I can't speak to them. I don't know why somebody would give up this wonderful uh, tool, but also this meal. I have the same experience. My wife and I are pretty firm in saying we see the same movie. We get bored at the same time. We say this is baloney at the same time, or we say, hey, that was pretty good at the same time. We very rarely disagree about those things. And I just feel sorry for people who aren't on the bus. That's the way I always said, either you're on the bus or you're not on the bus. Uh, and it's too bad if you miss that. I used to talk in classes about these internal things that would happen in the story, how it would hook you in the guts, and you would feel this churning when you're wondering what's going to happen, and you've identified with the hero, and you maybe get a shiver down your back when something meaningful happens. And some people just didn't get it at all, and
Um,
I'm just sorry for them. But that's human beings. We have different modalities. Some people are very visually uh, oriented, and that's how they take in the world. Other people need to touch it and feel it, uh, and some people are theoretical. So there are different ways to get there. But man, what a great tool for those of us who get it.
yeah. Well, and I go back to when I first saw the hero's journey and started studying it, and where Campbell said doors will open where, when you really follow your bliss, and people are like, oh, Park's blissing out. But I was like, okay, well, what does he exactly mean by this? You follow your bliss and doors will open where there were only walls before. And I experienced that. So I started studying it, right? And I was just like, whoa, there is something to this. Next thing I know, I went to Robert McKee's famous story conference with our son Parker. He went as a filmmaker. I went as a marketer because I wanted to understand it more. Sat through that amazing 3.5 day event. And then I was invited to meet him out at his home in Connecticut and interview him for my very first podcast. It was before I even had Business of Story up. And I'm like, what are the chances? Is this what Campbell's talking about? I started studying this thing. I went into this cave. I had no idea where it was taking me, but I had a sense there was something bigger, more magical there. And then next thing you know, I'm sitting in one of the legendary screenwriting coaches' homes in his living room, and I interviewed him for 2.5 hours. And then he came on this show two other times. And of course, now it's attracted the likes of you and John Booker on and so forth. That would have never happened had I not first made that first wish of wondering, how do I overcome this nonsense and noise of the internet? And then my will is, I'm willing to study anything and everything I can to make sense of this.
Yeah, well, this came in my life experience at a certain point. I tell the story in the book and the later editions of the book and the last chapter, which is called "Trust the Path." And there, I literally was on a kind of vision quest where I had screwed up many things in my life, lost a job, and ruined a marriage, and wrecked a car, and had done all those wrong turns, and I needed guidance and orientation. So I went on a hike, and unwisely by myself in a rainy season, and got terribly lost, and eventually, though, asked that I made my wish to the universe. I just spoke out, "Get me out of here," like the little girl in Rumpelstiltskin. And a voice came into my head and said, "Trust the path." And I looked around and said, "That's the problem, Mr. Voice. There isn't any path. And what else you got?" And the voice in my head said, "Trust the path." So I looked around, and the only path I could see was an ant trail. So I said, "Okay." And I got on my hands and knees, and I followed the ant trail, and that led to a deer trail that led to a fire road. And pretty soon I was out of the woods. Um, but that phrase was like a gift from my own subconscious, perhaps. But who knows? Who cares if it's good? And it gave me that idea, which I think is along the lines of Campbell's "Follow Your Bliss." It was my branding uh, way to express that. I said that's a flag I can wave for a long time. The idea that you're on a trail and you may not even realize you're on the trail, but you're on a path. A lot of people have walked on that path before you, but your view is unique and special and valuable. And so embrace that and look around you and realize uh, you're on a trail, and it does mean something, and it is going somewhere. And if you trust that, as you say, the story will cough up all these things you didn't expect. It'll pay attention to your desire, to your express wish, or your even more so to your will. When you start willing to do things and say, "I'm going to pay for this. I'm going to put the time down and the effort down," then the universe really responds, and amazing things happen.
And that's when you enter that extraordinary world of Campbell's world, right? Where you have allies and tests and villains. I like to call them villains, fog, and crevasses in the business world. Your competitors are your villains who are out to kind of, thwart your progress. Even your own self-talk can be your own villain, right? Fog. What don't you know you don't know? In your case, follow the path, but go out and try to find that path. And then the crevasses are, what are the gaps? It could be the gaps in your operations, the gaps in your thinking, the gaps, in all sorts of things that are keeping you from getting what you want. Identify those. Don't fight them, but embrace them. Figure out a way around them, and or even use their energy to your benefit.
That's
And,
true.
you
Yeah.
know, and also appreciate those in your customers' lives. What are their villains, fog, and crevasses that you, as their mentor or guide, are going to help them overcome?
Yeah, that's great. That really wakes up a thought in me about um, sort of a refinement of the idea of villains, is that we all encounter something called threshold guardians. That's another of these recurring archetypes. Um, and those are, just as you say, things that look menacing, threatening. They seem to be blocking you. They're like gate guards or cops, border patrol, something trying to stop you going to the next country, to the next phase. Um, and you can look at them as enemies, you can look at them as villains, but you can also find ways. I mean, this is a real firm promise in this whole hero's journey idea. If you're creative about it, you can take their energy, as in martial arts. You take the energy of the attacker, and all you do is maybe move to the side a little bit and figure out where is that attacker's center of gravity, and you just poke them with your finger and they crash to the ground. I've seen many demonstrations of this where skilled martial arts people can do this. Um, or where you take your competitor and you simply watch for them to make a mistake and then you benefit from it. You're like, thank goodness they made that mistake, or they made that claim and they can't back it up. Um, sometimes your worst enemy can be a kind of an ally if you have the flexibility of mind to do that.
Yeah, isn't that so true? Now, it sounds like you do a lot of work or have in the past with brands and teaching organizations about storytelling. It's not just Disney, it's not just Hollywood, but when you were working with brands, what are some of the things you tell them that our listeners could take away when they're thinking about the hero's journey and story and the aliveness of story and how to use it?
Well, this it mostly came out of the work with Swarovski. They were a forward-thinking company and very traditional in some ways, but willing to entertain these kind of ideas. And they were a company that already has a strong love relationship with their consumers. People just love those objects. Uh, they have a kind of dazzling quality because they work with facets and light and carving glass to make the impression of jewels. Um, and so people had a story that they were telling themselves. And I think that's true for every brand, that the consumer has a story in their mind about it, that that product disappointed me, or that product exceeded my expectations. And people become really loyal when the company matches their wishes.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at the Lego company that makes the plastic blocks that the kids put together and adults put together too, and that company fulfilled a wish that the audience had, which was for perfection, because their stuff was perfect. Every block matched every other block. The colors were very consistent, and people just were satisfied by that. And then the company drifted for economy reasons. They went off and outsourced making the bricks, and they started being a little bit off, and the colors didn't match. It used to be you could stack a little half-inch block 100 blocks high and it wouldn't fall over. But when they went to the other suppliers, things after 100 blocks, the whole thing is going this way and that, and the brand loyalty began to shrink, and they lost a large part, especially the adult Lego people, which was a big part of their brand. And so they came to their senses and they realized this, that we're messing with a love story that people have with our brand. And so let's recognize that. In fact, they went so far as to invite the consumers in to help plan the products, and had a wonderful program. They still do this, where you take their box of bricks is supposed to build the Eiffel Tower, and you make Paul Bunyan or something out of it. You do something unexpected with it, and they may take that and turn it into a production item that's all fan driven. So this is the kind of thing I like, is to uh, understand this sort of romantic relationship that people have with products that they like, and that should be honored and fed. You know, and be careful about monkeying with things too much,
Yeah.
because you know you could sour that relationship.
Well, and like you say in the book too, you go back to the idea of wishing, and storytellers are in the wish granting business. One of your things you call out is you say, be careful of what you wish for, because you put it out in the world. It can and probably will manifest itself if you are not paying attention and having taking the will to act to make sure that your wishes are heading in the right direction.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think too, for the business world, you know, there's a kind of a cooked down version of this, which is of the hero's journey. I mean, which is somebody wants something, they try to get it, they meet obstacles, and their original idea has to die or almost die in order to be reborn. And you can kind of see this in every commercial, even in a 30-second spot. Somebody wants something and they are frustrated. They want to look nice, but they've got some, you know, skin condition, or they have dandruff or something. And so they're frustrated, and, you know, their hopes might seem to be about to die. But then the product comes and restores their wish. So, you know, I think that this basic mechanism of hope and death of hope and then revival of hope is a useful thing for translating this into the language of business and marketing.
I think Kurt Vonnegut, the famous American writer, said it best. He said, stories are a man gets in a hole, a man gets out of a hole. It needn't be about a man, and it needn't be about a hole. People love that story. I thought that's the best summation of the hero's journey I've ever heard.
Yeah, they gave it to us in film school on the first day. They said you get a guy up a tree, you put alligators under the tree, and you start sawing the limb off, and then you get him down the tree again somehow. But you make it really, really tough in the middle.
Yeah.
So,
The last thing I wanted to cover with you very quickly is this idea about wants and needs, and this concept of NOBA, not only, but also. And the reason why I ask is we talk a lot about in our work the and, but, therefore narrative framework that I learned from Dr. Randy Olson, who is a USC film school grad, Harvard PhD evolutionary biologist. He taught me about the and, but, therefore. And then when I was reading through your book, I thought, well, there it is again, just kind of talked about in a little bit different way. Could you explain for our listeners what the NOBA concept is?
yeah, this comes out of the world of pitching, which is a highly refined art form in Hollywood, of course, where you have a very short time to go into a meeting with strangers and, you know, bedazzle them and get them saying, yes, we will spend $50 million on this, on the feeling that was created in this meeting. And you know, I'm sort of a student of rhetoric. This is a piece of the old art of rhetoric, of how do you convince people with your verbal arguments and evidence. And I noticed that the good ones often would use this form where they would say, everybody knows about X, but what you didn't know about X is Y. So an example was somebody came in and pitched, everybody knows about Abraham Lincoln. He was greatest president, and he freed the slaves and all that. Um, but what you didn't know about Abraham Lincoln is he was also a vampire hunter. And that was the pitch. And that was enough to get the studio executives to, you know, sign the check for that Abraham Lincoln vampire hunter movie. So I said, there's something here, and I think that has been for me a useful thing, is to establish the first part of it establishes a connection and agreement with the person you're talking to. Like, you know this, I know this, we all agree upon this, But then I'm going to take and build on that by adding a piece that you don't know or you hadn't thought of. And that seems to get people going, oh, yeah, you want that reaction. I hadn't thought about that. And
Yeah.
they can project to an audience or a consumer who I know all about soft drinks, but I didn't know there was a soft drink that will do this or that tastes like that. Uh, that something fresh and new. So it's good for things, especially when you're offering an innovation, because you can build on all the other brands do this, but my brand, uh, you didn't know that my brand has this extra feature.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we call that and statement of agreement, just as you said, is set the stage, set the scene. We can all agree this and it's important because of this. And then you have the plot twist. But you don't have it because of this major problem, or you didn't know about this. And that's the statement of contradiction. And then you lead to the therefore, which is a statement of consequence. Therefore, imagine when you get this, if you do this with us. And then you have that final pitch call to action in the second clause at the very end of the ABT, and you keep it focused on your audience. You make it about them, not about you, not about your brand. You are demonstrating that you understand them and appreciate what they want and empathize with why they don't have it because of this big problem that we are now going to help you solve for.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. All this is in this feeling area, and I got a physical sensation as you were describing that just now. And I think that's what you're really hoping to get. And they may not acknowledge it. The listener may not even know that this is happening. But uh, I believe that there is a kind of a physical keyboard in the body. And when you say something that lands as truth, or that's beautiful, or symmetrical, or pleasing, the body reacts, and you get a shiver of almost a feeling of mystical power or an insight or a shiver down the kind of shiver down the arm you get. Um, that's what I'm shooting for in scripts, and also in pitches and in working with brands. Is you want that involuntary physical response of yeah, that feels good. Yeah, yeah.
And isn't that just an energy exchange? The energy of this disembodied story that you are sharing in the ether that connects with that human being somehow and it gives them a visceral reaction. And that reaction is literally energy pulsing through their being. That's
Absolutely.
the magic of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's hard to bottle and quantify, but it's very real for most people. I think we have to make the note, that some people aren't on that bus and they don't feel these things because they're operating entirely in the skull casing and are disconnected from their bodies. But it's interesting because sometimes you can take even those people and give them that all over spinal feeling of oh yeah, I never thought about that, but yeah, that makes sense, or that feels right. And this was an important tool for me in meetings when we're talking about story and people are throwing out different ideas. I was a yes man in the studio system. And I don't mean that I said yes to everything the boss said. I kept my mouth shut while the discussion was going on and crazy ideas, wrong ideas were going on. I didn't shoot them down. I let them pass. But when somebody said something that was right, and I felt that in my body, that kind of click that that's right for the story, then I would say yes. And then I would be the yes man. And I would stand up and loudly say, yes, that's a great idea. That should be a keeper. And it was usually accompanied by some physical feeling that I got.
Yeah. And that's what we're going for. So let's bring this full circle with one of my favorite lines from your book where you said stories are alive and conscious and respond to human emotions. And I love that so much because, myself included, I think most people think as story is just a communication that's coming at you, maybe being pushed upon you. But really, what's happening when you do it right is you are pulling your audience into your story, like the tractor beam from the Death Star.
Yeah, that's good. Yes. Yeah, I think that there's a thing that Disney Imagineers who create the theme parks, and they're a combination of artist and engineer. Um, they talk about something called the story place. And I believe that's what we've just been talking about, that there is between the storyteller and the audience, there is this other thing that uh, exists, like in a cloud around your head, um, where you're weighing this and comparing it to other things in your life, and you're looking, always scanning for clues and hacks that will help you perform better, and even some little tiny way. The story place has its own life and its own power.
Yeah. Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming to our story place here on the Business of Story. Where can people learn more about you and your work? And I believe you have your 25th edition book of The Writer's Journey out.
That's right. Yeah, that the year of that has come and gone, but that's the latest edition, is the 25th edition, and I have nice illustrations that I commissioned for that book that I think enhance it, and also some new material around the things we've been speaking about. And I think if you want to look around the corner of this a little bit and see some other sides of it, and maybe some war stories, I have a WordPress blog, which is Chris Vogler .wordpress.com.
That's the best place. All right. Great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I tell the story there of how the original memo was written, and many other adventures that I've had.
Awesome. I can't wait to go check that out. Well, Chris, thank you very much for coming and sharing your story wisdom. You are not the godfather, maybe, I don't know what, the oracle of storytelling, with how you deciphered Campbell and made it all approachable and understandable to us. So I appreciate that, and thank you for that.
My pleasure. That's what I was trying to do, just to be useful. I'm like a sheepdog. My tail wags when I'm doing my job, and that's it. Bringing this to as many people as possible.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this show as much as I did bringing it to you. And if you know of anyone else that would benefit from it, well, feel free to share this episode with them. If you have not yet checked out the Story Cycle Genie, do that right now. Go get your brand story tested for free at storycyclegenie.ai, and join us next week when Jen Perry's going to be here. She leads the sales arm of Vagrants, which is the only director-led production company that transforms enterprise brand challenges into competitive advantages. We are going to be talking about empathy and the power of empathy to connect with your audiences. So be here then, and until then, remember that the most potent story you'll ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make that one exceptional. Thanks so much for listening.